All right. So my name is GIRISH MOHILE. I represent CMB regional centers. I manage the India market. So I manage Indian clients in India and globally. And today we are going to talk about CMB regional centers and the current EB-5 offering that we have, CMB Group 100. So before we begin, how many of you have already heard about or actually know about EB-5 visa? Just to show of hands. Have you heard of EB-5 visa? Do you know about EB-5 visa? Okay, quite a few people. For those who don't know, EB-5 visa is an investment-based visa wherein you invest a minimum of 800,000 US dollars into a qualifying business in the US, which qualifies the main applicant, spouse, and children, unmarried children below 21 years of age, for permanent residency or green card in the US. So what we do, it revolves around that EB-5 visa category. We specialize in EB-5 visa for the US. So, as I mentioned, the minimum investment amount is 800,000 US dollars. That needs to go into a qualifying business. As a regional center, CMB Regional Center's business is to source those qualifying projects or qualifying businesses which will qualify each of those investors for EB-5 visa or permanent residency in the US. So that's the premise in a nutshell. Now, as far as CMB Regional Centers is concerned, we are one of the oldest active regional centers in EB-5 space. So regional center is basically a designation which we were able to achieve back in 1997. So since then, we have been in this business. In last 28 years, we have worked on 90 plus projects, wherein we have more than 6,000 plus investors from 103 different countries, including India, who have gone through the EB-5 process via CMB regional centers. So as I mentioned, regional center is basically a designation. So what is the responsibility of a regional center? The basic responsibility is to act as a fiduciary on behalf of its investors. So we source these qualifying projects on behalf of the investors. We form a special purpose vehicle which is called as a limited partnership. There can be 50, 60, 70, 100 investors into that project. All the investors essentially pool their funds, the 800,000 US dollars, into that limited partnership, and those pooled funds are utilized for construction activities. So now these construction activities can be construction of an industrial logistics facility, it can be construction of a hotel project, it can be a resort, it can be a master plan residential community as well. So from a US standpoint, EB-5 program is a job creation program. So what happens is, once you invest your 800,000 US dollars into this qualifying business, your investment needs to create at least 10 full-time American jobs, which will then qualify you for your EB-5 visa. So as compared to other golden visas, which you must have heard about for other countries in Europe or Asia, it's not a real estate program wherein you are essentially going for a citizenship by investment. Although EB-5 is an investment-based visa, it's not a traditional investment, it's an investment into a business. So let's discuss what we do. So Pat Hogan is the founder and CEO of CMB Regional Centers. He's one of the pioneers in EB-5 space, one of the early entrants into EB-5 space as well. So he was one of the pioneers who actually came up with few things in the EB-5 industry, which are now a norm. And we are going to discuss that later on as well. Noreen Hogan is the president of CMB Regional Centers. She runs the day-to-day operations of the company. So she's the second generation who is running the company right now. And it's very important to know whom we are dealing with, right? You're investing 800,000 US dollars. The investment mostly is for a period of 4 or 5 years. So it's important to understand that whom are we trusting, whom are we letting our US dollars, 800,000 US dollars to be utilized. So Noreen is the president of CMB Regional Centers. And as I mentioned, we have worked with more than 6,700 plus investors. In total, we have more than 3 billion US dollars worth of EB-5 capital raise, and we have already repaid back 1.4 billion worth of EB-5 capital. So what it means is those investors have already gone through the full cycle of immigration, and they have successfully been repaid their EB-5 capital back. So we have 2,900 plus investors who have received their final green card as well. So EB-5 visa is a step-by-step process. So you first apply for your I-526 e-petition, then you reside in the US under the conditional residency. So it's a proper green card, but it's called as a conditional green card, which is valid for 2 years. And then you file for I-829 petition, which essentially removes the conditions. And that is when you end up getting the final green card. So these are the projects that we currently have. We have a 100% track record as far as all the projects are concerned. So what it means is all the projects that we have undertaken and we have filed with the USCIS, 100% of those projects have received the 956F approval or 924 approval or initial I-526 approval. These three approvals essentially can give you the evidence that whether the project has been approved by USCIS or not. And we have a 100% track record for that. So these are the projects that we have under our belt. So initially we used to have all the projects in most of the western part of the US. Now we have spread across. We have 6 regional center designations, which allows us to have projects in most part of the US. Now, what is the priority for an EB-5 investment? The first and foremost priority for your EB-5 investment is the green card. That's the first priority. The reason why you're moving forward with your EB-5 application is to secure a green card for yourself and the family. The second is return of your investment. So just like I mentioned that we have repaid 1.4 billion worth of EB-5 capital until now. So they have received their green card and they have received their capital back as well. And a very distant third is the return on investment. So, and this is a very common question for Indian clients who are usually looking for capital appreciation. That if I invest 800,000 US dollars, what's going to happen with my capital? Okay, I will get a green card, I will get my return of my capital as well, so 800,000 will be received, but will there be any capital appreciation? So usually with a regional center investment, the capital appreciation is very, very low and low risk, but the reward is the green card. So the only reward that you're getting in this particular investment is the green card. We can probably take the questions later on. Yeah. So this is the structure that we have, which I mentioned that Pat Hogan was one of the pioneers. So he came up with this loan model, which is quite prevalent in the EB-5 industry. It's rather a norm right now. So each of the investors over here will become a limited partner and they will be investing into CMB limited partnership. So CMB Group 100, which we are going to discuss, is that CMB limited partnership, wherein CMB becomes a general partner, each investor becomes a limited partner, and this enterprise, new commercial enterprise, is in the business of lending funds to the developer. So we are not the developer. We work with several developers, we onboard those projects, and those are essentially the borrowers for this project. So the funds which are going to go as a loan, it can be for a tenure of 5 years, 6 years, 3 years, it depends. With us, it's 5 years tenure for the loan, and the funds are utilized for the construction activity. Once the construction happens, the borrower is going to essentially sell or refinance that project, and after the selling or refinancing happens, the funds essentially come back into the partnership. So the loan is repaid back into the partnership, and each of the eligible investors will start getting the repayment of their capital. So this is the team that we have. This is a very important slide because there are many regional centers in this business. So probably upwards of 500 regional centers in this business. But what differentiates CMB regional centers is the kind of team that we have. So we have a projects team, we have a legal team, we have a compliance team. I am based in Mumbai, so I manage India market. So there is always going to be someone who will be answering your questions if you have any doubts about any of the offerings that we have. And even if when you become a limited partner, all the updates are provided to each of the limited partners on a periodic basis. So this team is very important. There are players in the market who are essentially 5 people, 6 people, 10 people at the max, and they run $1 billion worth of business. So they have an asset under management of upwards of 1 billion, 2 billion US dollars. The question to be asked is, what is the probability of the success of that particular investment, and who is going to be responsible for answering all the questions that I may have, not just while I'm conducting my due diligence, but also once I apply with my petition. And all the statistics that I've produced, all are backed by audited reports. So CMB actually was one of the, or rather the first regional center, which started having periodic audits for all the partnerships starting 2015. So as per the Reforms and Integrity Act of 2022, which is the new law which is in place, uh, now the audit reporting requirements are a requirement. However, CMB started doing this even when that was not a requirement. We did this voluntarily, and we did that for all the partnerships dating back to early 2000s. So when you're looking at any EB-5 investment, there are essentially three important key players involved. The first is the regional center. We already discussed about CMB regional centers. The second is the developer, and the third is the project. So let's spend some time to discuss the developer of this particular project. So the current project that we have, CMB Group 100, is actually being constructed by the Hillwood company. It's a construction arm of the Perot family. This company was formed in 1988 by Ross Perot Jr. If you have some background about the US politics, Ross Perot Sr. actually ran for presidential election back in the 90s, in 92 and 96. And this is their third billion-dollar venture. So they had EDS, which they sold to GM in 1984. They had Perot Systems, which they sold to Dell in 2009. And Hillwood is their third billion-dollar company. Hillwood specifically specializes into two asset classes. So they have a huge portfolio, but they specialize in industrial logistic facilities. That's their one specialty, or their core competency. And second is master plan residential community. So I shared the statistics which were CMB wise. Now these are the statistics wherein CMB is the regional center or the lender, and Hillwood is the developer or the borrower in those partnerships. So in total, we have worked with them on 40 plus partnerships wherein we have more than 2,000 investors, and 800 investors have already received their capital back. So one of the interesting facts about CMB and the relationship with Hillwood is that we have worked with them on 44 occasions. So we have worked with them since Group 8. Now we are at Group 100, and we have been working with them since 2012. In a span of 12-13 years, we have worked with them on 44 projects with a total EB-5 raise of 1.1 billion US dollars. It's probably more than that now. And they have successfully repaid back loan worth 567 million US dollars. Not a single default, not a single delay, both in terms of repayment of loan or quarterly interest payment as well. So this relationship between a lender and a borrower, although we are not affiliated to Hillwood in any capacity, nobody has any ownership interest on each of the entities. It's a separate company altogether. But this lender-borrower relationship has essentially been successful to the extent that we have raised 1.1 billion US dollars, and they have already repaid back almost half of it. Now coming to the current project that we have. So CMB Group 100, we are actively raising 79.2 million US dollars for this particular project. So up to 99 available units in this project. It's by Hillwood. As the name goes, the project name is Hillwood Flywheel, and it's a build-to-suit project. Now let's understand what build-to-suit means. So when you're thinking about any industrial logistic facility, there can be a speculative kind of project wherein the construction of the project is ongoing. It's mostly demand-driven. So you're constructing the project based on the demand which is there in that area. So while the construction is ongoing, we don't know who the tenant for that project is going to be or the buyer of that project is going to be. Build-to-suit is a bit different. In build-to-suit projects, we already know who the tenant is going to be. So the construction of this project is starting right now, and it's going to be completed in Q2 of 2027, but we already know who's going to occupy the space as a tenant. So in this project, the Lego company, the company which manufactures toys, is actually the tenant in this project. They have already signed a 20 years lease. So once the completion of the project is achieved, they are going to be occupying the space for the next 20 years, and they will start paying the rent as well. So what's the premise? Why is this happening? Why have they already signed the lease for this particular facility? So Lego is actually constructing a manufacturing plant wherein they are investing more than 1 billion US dollars in Greater Richmond, Virginia. So the construction work for that manufacturing plant has already begun. They have already spent around 200 or 300 million US dollars. They have already achieved a certain milestone in their construction. And obviously, when you're constructing a manufacturing plant, you do need a distribution facility. So whatever goods or whatever toys which are being manufactured in this plant are going to be distributed through the distribution facility which Hillwood is going to be constructing. So the EB-5 funds are actually going into the construction of the distribution facility which Hillwood is constructing. So this is a 1.7 million square feet worth of manufacturing space. And this is essentially going to be supporting the supply chain in Eastern Corridor of the US. So Washington, DC is around 100 miles away, and you will be able to see the radius and the supply chain and the highways, which essentially makes this project a very apt location for the manufacturing to happen and the distribution to happen. Another important factor is all of you must be aware about the current administration's policy that US wants companies to construct in the US, or they want to manufacture, they want companies to have their manufacturing facility in the US. And Lego company is actually doing that. So it also aligns with the current policies which are there in place in the US. So this is the actual distribution facility which will be constructed. It's going to be a Class A facility having the latest amenities available. And this is going to be a 2 million square feet worth of space wherein all the toys which are being manufactured in the plant are going to be moving through this distribution facility. Now this particular project falls under high unemployment targeted employment area. So let me just cover this briefly. So when you're investing into your EB-5 investment or thinking of investing for EB-5 visa, you essentially have two categories. One is the targeted employment area wherein the investment amount is lowered at 800,000 US dollars. If the investment is outside of the targeted employment area, then the investment amount as per the law is 1,050,000 US dollars. So this project falls under that high unemployment targeted employment area, which is TEA, which brings down the investment amount to 800,000 US dollars. Now the total project cost, I think the font is really small, but the total project cost is 260 million US dollars. There is a senior lender in place. I'll talk about that in a bit. So EB-5 loan is 79.2 million US dollars. Developers' own equity is 25 million US dollars. And this senior construction loan is provided by UMB Bank. And 156 million US dollars are going to be spent for construction. However, the actual loan which is approved by UMB Bank is 296 million US dollars. Why is that? Because the senior lender itself is the buyer of this project. So once the construction is completed, the project is not just pre-leased, but it's also set to be sold. The senior lender itself is going to be the buyer of this project. So they are going to own this asset so that they are able to have the revenues which are going to come from the lease by the Lego company for them for the next 20 years. So that's the attractiveness to them to buy this particular project. Now, as far as the job creation is concerned, the minimum requirement for your 800,000 worth of investment is to create 10 full-time jobs. In this, we have projected 100% buffer. So instead of 10 jobs, each investor will be credited with 20 jobs as per the estimates. And all this data, the TEA analysis, the job creation analysis, the business plan, that has already been submitted to USCIS. And as of 2 days ago, we have already received 956F approval, which is the project approval from the USCIS. We have already received that. Now, as far as the collaterals are concerned, we have access to the cash flows. So for each dollar which is earned by the borrower, they have to store 50% of that into this cash flow pledge account. There is a 100% distributions pledge for this project as well. So we have access to that particular account wherein CMB Group 100 as a senior, as a mezzanine lender is going to have access to that as a first priority right holder for this particular account. And there is a completion guarantee to this project as well. So Hillwood has provided a completion guarantee to the Lego company that they will be completing this project on time. So these are few of the details for this particular project. I'm happy to have any questions from your end, happy to resolve any queries that you may have over here, or we are at the booth over there as well. I think it's B03, so you can come and meet me, and happy to answer all the questions that you may have. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Okay.
926 is the approval for construction, correct?
956F application.
Okay. And 526 is the approval for what?
526C is the first EB-5 approval which is received. So 956F application is the application which we have to make while we submit the project to USCIS. 526C is the individual petition which individual investor makes to USCIS for their EB-5 application.
And on one of the slides, you mentioned about on the complete US map, there are different places where you have rural centers and other centers, right? The regional centers, they're classified into different areas.
Right.
So in rural centers, what would be the, kind of construction it would be?
So regional center designation is essentially which we are able to get after we comply with certain norms that USCIS has. That essentially allows us to raise EB-5 capital on behalf of the investors. What you are probably asking about is the rural category, right? So rural category is a category of a project. So that project is essentially outside of the metropolitan statistical area with a population of less than 20,000 people. So that qualification is based on the project. The regional center designation is the designation which we are able to apply for that particular project.
And that will have 800,000 or there will be lesser?
That will be 800,000 as well.
And the last question is for this LPGP structure, typically you have a, kind of a committed capital from the LPs. So is that structure that way or it is the entire money is taken in the first go?
Right. So
the capital is called or it is given in the first go?
Right. So you're asking about the investment strategy, right? Whether the 800,000 needs to go in at one go?
Yes, yes.
Right. So typically the 800,000 US dollars need to go at one go. However, as per the law, you need to be in the process of investing. So we do allow investors to partially fund. So let's say you have 400,000 right now and you're in the process of liquidating your assets. You're selling a property or you're liquidating your investments. Then we may allow 3 to 6 months of timeline based on a case-by-case basis. So you're able to file your petition at 400,000 and then later on you are able to complete your full funding of 800,000 before that time period.
But the LRS remittance, entitlement from India is only $200,000 per
250.
year. 250.
250,000.
So, is there a special provision for EB-5 to move $800,000?
No, there is no special provision as such. LRS is basically all encompassing and you probably have to speak with a chartered accountant as to how that structure works while you are trying to remit the funds. And this is a very important question because from an EB-5 standpoint, the source of funds of the documentation and the pathway of funds of the documentation is very important. So while we manage the investment side of things, every investor also needs to work with an immigration attorney and probably their own chartered accountants so that they are able to track the funds as to how the funds are moving and where the funds are coming from. That data also goes in as part of your petition, as part of your I-526C petition.
Yes, because what you're saying is 250 is the minimum I can do. 800,000 if I do, it has to be settled in the same accounting year. Otherwise, if it is stretching for 5 years, then that support I don't get from your side. It will be my local attorney, correct?
That is correct. So how the funds are transferred to the US is something which you will need to work with your immigration attorney and your chartered accountant.